Eddsworld does not have an age rating. Nothing on YouTube does really. But if we had to give Eddsworld an age rating, what classification would it receive? Before we decide whether or not Ed's nipples are too much for the average 12-year-old to handle, I want to stress that there are different ways to classify different kinds of media. The BBFC and MPA are in charge of rating movies in Great Britain and the US respectively, and they rate movies using their own form of age recommendation. There are similar systems for video games and television. Audio tends to be more black and white. An album might have a parental advisory sticker in the corner of the record, or a podcast might have an explicit content label. Books, meanwhile, don't usually have any kind of standardized rating to speak of, and nobody is seriously suggesting we implement one. And online, there are adult-only restricted videos and videos that are expressly made for children, but the majority of platforms assume that whoever is holding the account is responsible enough to watch most videos without restriction. So we creators are not expected to lock our videos behind any kind of age verification. Yet. But if you're a parent and you want to know whether Eddsworld is appropriate for your child, where would you even begin? Would you have to watch every single video and take note of all of the explicit content and triggers that appear throughout? Well, luckily for us, Eddsworld has created a handy little guide. There's a page on the Eddsworld website called Info for Parents, and it contains information that Eddsworld thinks is relevant to parents. Obviously, this is their own opinion and it might not hold up to rigorous cross-examination, but if you're a parent or guardian whose child won't stop talking about Eddsworld, this is a good place to start. The first thing that catches your eye when you open the Info for Parents page is this series of illustrations. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that rings true here. Milder obscene language, cartoonish threat, and scarier elements are present within Eddsworld, but that's about as bad as it gets. If you as a parent look at this page and make a snap judgment about whether this show's content is right for your child, you're probably correct and able to make an informed parenting decision without reading the rest of the article. But let's read on anyways. Videos and comics contain fantasy violence, mostly involving zombies and colourful monsters, very occasional rude language, peril, and some mild adult themes. Hell, fantasy, danger, death, grief, loneliness, sexual innuendo. They also identify that pre-legacy content, that's videos before 2012, can be more violent or adult than later seasons. I think there's truth to the idea that older stuff can be more adult, although there are obvious exceptions. Zombie Attack from 2005 is clearly inspired by the works of Sam Raimi, so much of the gore is visceral and over the top. But then I watched the much newer Zombie Picnic, and that's got some of the most gruesome imagery in the series. Violence is probably the most persistent, mature element of the show, and there are also some moments that could be upsetting to younger minds. Hello Hellhole sees the main characters traveling to hell. It's not particularly graphic and it's not biblical in any way, and all of the violence is played for laughs, but hell as a concept can be scary, even when it's a fantastical version like the one on screen. Could this episode seriously disturb or traumatize some children? That's not a decision I could make, but the page is definitely right to flag this episode in particular as a potential cause for concern. The most scary video in the series is probably Tales of Terror, with themes of entrapment and peril throughout. It's basically one of a kind in that it's a pure horror anthology with no comedic spin. It's not heavy with graphic violence, but there are some dark concepts and sad endings in each of the 3 stories. Rude language is honestly quite rare in Eddsworld, but it can come up from time to time, and as I mentioned in the Kim and Katia video, you can find moments of innuendo and nudity in the old stuff, but nothing overly graphic. I'd actually go so far as to say that most of the language and nudity actually comes from a place of immaturity. There's certainly nothing that's intended to arouse, and even the worst of the older stuff is just vaguely pandering. Finally, the page does briefly mention videos about Ed's illness as part of the Eddsworld story, specifically how those videos might be a little heavy for children without supervision. Death and illness are parts of the human condition that tragically could be confronted by anybody at any age, and I think it's important for young people to face these realities with guidance from adults who can help them understand these topics and the emotions that can arise. If a young person spends time watching Eddsworld or interacting with the community, it's very likely that they're going to have to come face to face with this chapter in Eddsworld's history. If you're a parent who's come here looking into whether or not Eddsworld is right for you, make sure that your child is emotionally mature enough to handle these videos, and be aware that other fans online might not always approach these discussions with the level of maturity one might expect. That's kind of what the internet is, I'm afraid. So with all that said, what is Eddsworld's target audience? I'm going to read a passage from the Info for Parents page that pretty definitively answers this question. The content is generally aimed at a teenage audience, between the ages of 13 and 18, but we like to think it appeals to all ages. As someone who's been watching the show for over a decade, I agree with this assessment. YouTube actually has a minimum age requirement of 13 years old. We all know that there are very little kids using the platform, but I do think that 13 is a good general guide for how old you should be to have a YouTube account, so it makes sense that Eddsworld would be made for that demographic. Do I think that Eddsworld should be restricted to over 13s? Well, no. Elements of the show do appeal to all ages, and I'd say that most episodes are unlikely to cause harm or offense to young children. As a disclaimer, I don't have any young children in my life. I can only speak to how I was at that age. If I had to give Eddsworld an age rating, I would rate it PG, but like early PG. In the early 1980s, there was no PG-13 or 12A rating, so PG films from that time might have more swearing, nudity, and violence than you might expect from even a 12A nowadays. And that was okay. This symbol is a warning that parental guidance is advised, and parents have always been empowered to make that decision. You know, our teacher showed the classroom Jaws when I was 10 years old. I turned out great, by the way. Eddsworld fits the spirit of early PG, I think. It can be gory and vulgar, but with guidance and supervision from a responsible adult, a mature child of almost any age could find something to enjoy, so long as their parents think they're ready. I really appreciate this Info for Parents page. With governments clamping down on young people's internet access, we're going to be seeing more discussions about how we should raise children in an online world. Right now it is a parent's responsibility to educate their children about online safety, and it's important that they understand the kind of content their child is likely to be exposed to online. And if we want parents to be educated, this page is a great place to get started. There is so much more to this Info for Parents page that I would love to cover in the future. Let me know if you'd see a video about honesty and misinformation online, or a video about interacting with strangers in an algorithmically curated world. Both of these are covered on the info page, so they're both on the table. Subscribe to be notified if and when I post those, and I will see you in the next one.